Just say the sentence like you mean to say it.
Women try to be small.
That's exactly what it is. If you put in the word kinda or sort of or just before the other words you want to say, then you're like shrinking and shrinking and shrinking in case they get mad at you, and then they can't get as mad at you because you're just
so little.
You're just so small.
Yeah. No, one of the things that I'm trying to that I'm trying to impress upon certain students that have come into the studio, like, I want people to be big.
Take up space. I know. I try to say that too.
Yes,
because we're taught to be very small.
Yeah, and especially like with your chest, like we do this a lot.
Don't
but it's
take
like
up too much space. Curl into a small ball.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like when you're able to like open up, it also like it changes your whole persona.
Yeah,
it changes how people interact with you.
It changes your actual physical energy too.
Yes. I remember exactly when this changed for me, because for the longest time, as a kid, as a teenager, like, I did that whole, like, walking with my books like this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody said, stand taller. And when I did, and I opened up, and then I started, like, watching where I was going, people started interacting with me more.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually, like, opening up to people, and it changed everything.
I looked down a lot.
Yep. Shoegazer.
Yeah, I looked down because then you avoid any conflict whatsoever because you're not making any eye contact. I had a lot of trouble with eye contact. I still do a little bit, but because of school, that was like one of the main things that we had to work on for social work, is you have to make eye contact with people unless it's like a cultural barrier and it's considered rude. But yeah, so I had to like practice that. That's been really hard for...
There are people that I know or have experienced that they have, like, such intense eye contact that I'm like, can we, like, blink for a second?
Yeah, and I have trouble with that, too. Because there's a certain point where it's like, okay, you see too much.
You're burning into my soul.
Stop it.
Well, and so one of the things that I looked up was, we're talking about communication, how to listen. And the first thing is maintaining eye contact when listening. But here's the thing. That's really hard for me because the act of maintaining eye contact takes so much of my effort, I can't pay attention to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm going to say.
Yes. Sometimes if somebody's talking and they're getting into something really deep, I need to look in a different direction at something that's not moving. Kind of like when you're trying to keep your balance in yoga. If you're in tree pose, you don't look around and, No,
you'll fall over.
You'll fall over, so you find one spot to focus on. And also in a lot of cultures, I had to learn this, working with anybody that is from pretty much anywhere in Africa, any Muslim cultures, it's super duper rude to make eye contact with somebody that's older than you, which was, I worked with a lot of younger folks.
I did not know that.
So full eye contact is rude, and also not making eye contact while somebody's talking to you and then looking off to the side allows you to listen more fully.
That's actually one of the things that I was taught, I can't remember by whom, about meeting dogs for the first time. So when dogs meet each other, they don't have eye contact.
It's considered aggressive.
Yeah, so when I meet a dog, I'm usually like, I put my hand down.
Yeah.
You come up to me, and I'm not going to make eye contact.
Give them the power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's considered aggressive, and in some cultures, people find it aggressive, too.
I agree.
I think eye contact can be aggressive. I've definitely met people that use their eye contact aggressively as a way to intimidate.
Yeah.
And I think eye contact is a tricky thing. I don't think that eye contact alone insinuates that you are listening.
No.
I think there's too much to it.
Because you can actually, like, go into, like, staring where you don't blink, and you're gone.
Yeah. If I'm staring in one place I might be paying attention, but I could also just be something's happening in here and my eyes are just focused on the thing so that I can focus on this other sense. So yeah, eye contact's a tricky one.
And one of the other things in here, so the other one is don't interrupt a speaker. I'm really bad about that.
I can't because me too.
I get I'm passionate about something. I'm like, oh wait, yeah. I mean, I'm never usually offended by being interrupted. My only thing is like I have such a crappy memory, like, but I gotta sort of be okay with that because if it's not important enough for me to remember it after I've been interrupted, then I could probably let it go.
I guess, yeah, that's usually my worry too when I interrupt is that I'll forget the thing and that I really want to say the thing or whatever, I don't know. And then living with somebody that has ADD that can get rough at times because it's like if he's on a track and he's talking on that track and I'm like, oh, I just remembered this one thing I have to tell you. His track is gone.
Yep.
The train is derailed. It's all over. So that's been something that I've had to force myself to figure out. Also with being a therapist, like I can't interrupt them. That would make me really bad at my job. So sometimes that's a part of it too, is just like being okay with silence for chunks of time. I think too.
Even as a yoga teacher, that's something that, because I've chosen to teach yin and restorative,
you gotta hold space
and meditation.
That space is quiet.
Yep. Yeah. You gotta know when to say stuff, like take a look at people, see if they need some guidance, but then otherwise recognize and be okay with not only the silence, like you being quiet, but also allowing silence for that person, and you don't necessarily have to make them comfortable. Sometimes the silence that somebody's experiencing, they need to experience the discomfort of that silence. Like, okay, you sit there and figure out, why are you uncomfortable with me not saying anything? Where are your thoughts going?
Yeah, and that's really common.
That's on you.
I think a lot of people feel the need to fill silence. I think that's probably a pretty human quality. I don't mind. Introverts tend to be a lot better with silence than extroverts because it feels like depleting. For introverts, it's recharging in some scenarios.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe even going back to our last episode talking about community, for some people to have silence could make them feel like isolated or withdrawn. But I think in small doses, it's good to be comfortable with it. But
honestly, that's like a sign for me of a really good relationship. Like, if I can be in the same room with you and we're like reading a book.
Yeah, I love that.
I could be in a room with you all day long and not say a word to you, and I feel like that's still quality time.
That's good stuff.
I feel like that's spending time together.
Yes.
We don't have to say a single word.
Yeah, I know that I've definitely had people in yin or restorative classes who were new to it and were visibly uncomfortable by some of the silence. And that always is something for me to work through too, is like, okay,
that's part of the practice for them.
Like, they need to deal with this, but maybe I should say something. But they need to, but I should, but, and then I have a little bit of internal dialogue that goes on for a little bit, and this, like, the people pleasing wants to kick in, and then I'm like, no, that's not part of this class. I don't need to talk them through this experience. Like, they read the description. Hopefully, a lot of people don't read the description of the class.
Yes, please, God, we put so much effort into.
Like we type up these descriptions so you know what you're going to. So don't just like drop into a class and just go, I don't know what this was. It said yoga, so I showed up. Just like read it, because then what happens is people are like, why aren't we moving? Why is it quiet? Because you didn't read
because it's
the classes. Communication.
That's what we're talking about. So going back to the eye contact thing, one of the other aspects of how to listen is controlling body language. This is what this guy was saying. This website actually that I have up over here, listening skills are an important part of effective communication. Controlling body language, so with the eye contact thing, people that I've found that have the most aggressive eye contact are fully facing me just like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that is like,
upright
you
too.
Might as well be naked standing right in front of me. Like, that is too much.
Yeah.
So when I am very comfortable in sideways. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't have to be totally sideways, because not everything's a podcast.
We only talk to people at this, what is this, like a 45-degree angle?
Yes, this is
That's about how I sit when for my sessions. because the way that I have like a couch and then I sit kind of like at a 45-degree angle. Yeah, I had to practice body language because we had to do a lot of recording of ourselves in these like fake sessions and then watch them and then like take notes and like pick ourselves apart. It was horrible, but it made me realize that I fidget really bad, and I fidget during the podcast. I try really not to, but
I feel like it's interesting.
It adds, a little something. But yeah, I have had to really work on that, and especially in like if I know I'm sitting with somebody that was maybe more anxious. Like I don't need my anxiety to be so obvious.
I feel like this is my imagery, and it's a representation of how I grew up. I feel like everything that's coming out of here, if you remember the Care Bear stare, so they blasted out from their bellies. Yeah. And I feel like that's like all of my energy is coming forward from this way. And so in order to sort of be respectful of your space and your energy, I'm not going to be like, psh, like that. So I'm just going to like give you a little bit. And I'm going to allow your energy to have space to go where it needs to go. That's kind of what I'm imagining by having the diagonal or the angle.
Yeah. And I've noticed in yoga classes, nobody ever wants to be directly in front of the yoga teacher. So everybody wants to be off to the side, which I think is fine. I think
that's great. I sit in the corner.
Yeah, I like to
as
be
a teacher.
Yeah, I like to be in a corner whenever I possibly can. But in a yoga setting, I like for people to be off just a little bit because it gives them a little bit more sense of being in their, their little safe bubble, but still being able to receive information or whatever they need. So, yeah. And then I don't feel like because again, keeps talking about the fact that I'm an introvert, because I am, with those kinds of things like teaching yoga or being in a therapy session, I got to protect my bubble too, so I can protect my energy. And that can be one little teeny tiny way of doing it, is like physically just actual body positioning.
I'm sensitive to personal space. Like oh God, yeah. So I went to this really uncomfortable workshop over the weekend. Super duper uncomfortable.
I wouldn't have been able to do it.
It was a lot about sacred feminine and all that stuff. But so there was Friday night, and then Saturday morning, we're sitting there, we're getting seated, and a gal came in, and she sat right in front of me so that we were like maybe 2 feet apart. And I was
facing you?
Nope, facing away from me. So that'd be weird. So we're all facing forward, but she sat like here. So her back is like right there, and I'm like, I could actually feel her presence so much. And I'm like, I was here first of all. And she sat there, and it was funny, like, I scooted back like 3 inches, and I was still really uncomfortable, but I was still being very aware of the other people around me. Finally, she never turned around. She actually got up and walked away. And I was like, there is no way she could not have felt my circle of energy, and she was in it. And my energy over that weekend was like so erratic that I guarantee people felt it. She had to have been uncomfortable, but she moved.
Yeah. It's proprioceptory ability, or ability to feel things that are close, our bodies in space, and where things are related to us. Like, whales are really adept at that, underwater. We've got it too. So I am sure that she felt that. There's if we go back to not the last podcast, but the podcast before, where we talked about spiritual rebels, there was an exercise in there. There's no way in hell I would do with anybody. You're supposed to sit about this close but facing each other so that your knees touch.
Oh yeah.
And then you just gaze into each other's eyes.
You haven't done the eye gazing thing?
I feel like I had to do that in yoga teacher training, and maybe at this point that was like 11 years ago, and I think that was enough for me for
I did that just recently at the silent retreat with another woman, and she just started crying. And I was like, I felt like a complete asshole because I did not cry.
Yeah.
However, I tried to like soften my face and feel compassion through my eyes. Like, I was like, how do I show you that I care right now with just my eyes? That was actually really, I did. Yeah. Because then after the silent retreat was over, she came up and gave me a hug, and she's like, you had so much love in your eyes. And I'm like, well, thank you, because that's what I was trying to accomplish. Because, like, I couldn't hug her.
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything, but it was just like I had to love her with my eyes.
Oh, man.
That was a lot. And it's like, I really do
I'm
feel
stressed out and I wasn't even there.
I know. Like,
my hands are sweating.
I know my armpits are dripping. Just like all that eye contact.
Yeah.
The last thing that they talk about as far as like how to listen, and I didn't intend to start with listening, but notice what they don't say as well as what they do. That is huge. The things that people either avoid or imply, or the space in between. Mm-hmm. You know, so there's that sort of like pregnant pause.
Yeah.
Between what they're telling you is just as important. It's like how you say something is just as important as what you say. And so when you're listening, you're paying attention to all of that.
Kind of like if you ask somebody how they're doing and they're like, okay.
Yeah. Or how long it takes for them to answer you.
Yeah. And then you can ask again. No, but really,
like
how
for
are
real.
You? Yeah.
You know what? One thing I'm going to share. So it drives me crazy when I ask you, how are you doing? And I don't mean you, a person in general.
Oh, I'll tell you. I tell you whatever.
Yes. When I'm like, how are you? Or how was your day? Fine. How was yours? Fuck. That was a waste of my time.
Yeah.
No, I mean like for real. How was your day? How are you?
I can tell you.
And don't directly answer. Don't answer quickly and then ask how I am, because that was not the point of the question. Because fine is a useless word.
People do it in counseling.
Oh my God, it makes me crazy. And then, so what I've come to is I ask the question expecting a useless answer.
I'm always like, my allergies are killing me. I can't stop coughing. Oi!
So I ask the question and then I ask it again, like 3 minutes later after they've given me some BS and I've BS'd them back about how I'm doing, because this isn't about me.
Yeah.
You've just come into my class. This is about you, not me. So a couple minutes later, so how are you?
Yeah.
And we've already gotten through all the BS of that first thing. God.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest beefs.
The only way I would say I was fine is if this were your class and there are like 5 other people in the room and you're asking everybody how you're doing and I'm like, I don't know any of these other people, so I'm just gonna be like, I'm great.
Yeah, because I do a check-in. Yeah.
Yeah, because I probably already told you whatever dumb
That's
stuff happened to me that day, so I'm just for the rest of the group, I'm like, I'm doing great. Energy's great, sleeping great, everything is A-okay.
Greedy.
Yeah, but that does. Oh, I don't know why people do that at the beginning of a counseling session, because it's like, oh, you're great, okay,
then why are you here?
bye.
Job done.
Yeah,
thanks for your money.
I must be really good. Yeah, younger people, college students were a lot worse because they wanted to be so polite. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know if it's nursing students. I don't know what it was, but it never failed. So I stopped asking people in those words, how are you? I think
it's also a knee-jerk thing. Like you see somebody for the first time, you know, they come in the room or whatever, and you're like, oh, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
It's just like those words all go together.
It's just our thing that we say. Yeah, I've had to switch it up a little bit. And everybody could switch it up a little bit. If it's somebody that you know a little bit or know a lot, you can ask them something different. Like, hey,
do you like peanut butter?
Well, it could be something like, what's something interesting that happened to you today? Or what's something really crazy that happened today? Or I don't know, just something along those lines. Or what was the best part of today?
How was lunch?
Yeah. You could totally ask me how was lunch. What'd you have for dinner? Like, you can ask literally anything else.
That's a good point.
I ask people,
how's your laundry?
Yeah.
Do your laundry?
I'll ask people how their dogs are doing, but that's
a good one too.
Yeah,
you gotta know.
If I know they have a dog, I will 100% ask how their dogs are doing. Students in a yoga class, clients in therapy, friends. I want to know.
Yeah, and I think it's easier
How's
for people
your
to
dog?
talk about something. Right.
Drop a line in the comments.
Right. Getting bigger. Not sleeping well.
Tell me about your cat.
Right. So other things so the flip side of how to listen, but then on the other side, things to pay attention to or avoid. So be aware of your own bias or your prejudice when you're talking to somebody.
Oh, that's huge.
Or when you're listening. So for example, like their accent or their first language. Yeah. So
yes,
check that.
We talked about bias before, and I don't remember what episode, but you can Google Harvard implicit bias, and that should take you to, at this point, like 20 different things where you can test your implicit bias. So implicit means you cannot help it.
Yep.
It means it's something that you are not consciously doing. It's something that has maybe been programmed into your brain and you're not even aware of it. So it's unconscious bias. So the deal with that is, if you go on, you take the test, and you find out that you have a bias against a group, and you're like, oh God, that feels really icky. Okay, cool.
So you're human.
And guess what? You know that now, and you can work on it.
Yeah.
You can work on it in conversations with other people. You can work on it by educating yourself on things. I mean, even going back to like the Pride episode that we did, there were people that were saying like, oh, I'm okay with Pride, but I don't know about trans folks. It's like, so look into it.
Figure it out.
If that's a bias for you and you're okay with every other piece of going to Pride, or just like LGBTQ, because the T is in there, Pride in general, except for that one piece, look into it a little bit.
Or like sit there and think about like, why would I have an issue with transgender?
Yeah, and I think that might be one of the implicit bias tests, but they mostly deal with like race, religion, gender, sexuality, stuff like that. And it's just giving you two choices. That's it. So it's not hard. It takes a few minutes. I have a few that I took, and I was like, ew, I don't like that.
Yeah, like, sorry.
There were some where I was like, I felt really, like, way too good about myself because of the outcome I got. I'm like, man, I am so tolerant.
So open-minded.
So open-minded. But the reason that I probably got those scores was because, my goodness, because I've been working on stuff with, like, cultural competency and social work for the last, I don't know, going on like a decade with all the different jobs I've had. So duh, of course, I mean, I've been working really hard.
And that's the thing. I mean, it does take practice.
Yeah.
And acknowledging the thing in order to work on it is important.
Right. And sometimes you can't help it. If you grew up with around certain language or certain types of things, I mean, even if it's not your conscious thought, hence the word implicit,
right,
it might still be in there. You might still have groups of people that you're kind of like wary of, or things that you are kind of, I don't know, a little bit weirded out by that could affect how you communicate with other people. And nobody watching wants to be a jerk.
I hope not.
I mean, not on purpose.
Not on purpose, right.
I mean, maybe for fun, just like a little bit, but not like a for real jerk. Right. Like a mean person.
Right.
None of you want to be a mean person.
One of the other things to keep in mind when you're communicating with somebody is worry or fear. Like the concept of like the resistance to change. So, for example,
your worry or fear or theirs?
Yours. So, for example, when I'm listening or trying to communicate with somebody, like if I'm afraid of saying something that they're going to take it the wrong way, or rejection, or for example, like that we might disagree.
The rejection and conflict thing. Oh my God. Everyone is.
I love that though. No, I don't love rejection, but I like differences sometimes.
That's good, because like 98% of everyone else doesn't. I'm realizing that like people come to counseling because they don't know how to talk to their partner or friends, and that is because they are afraid of conflict.
God, I pretty much insult everybody.
The perceived conflict is that other people will think they're stupid.
I mean, I'm afraid of that.
That's like
legit
universal.
Yeah.
That is like what, like every relationship you can possibly think of, whether it's with your parents or your brother or your sister or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whomever, any fears you have around it is that they will think you're stupid or reject you.
I absolutely, like, that's one of the limiting factors in my relationship with my family, is that they're all super intelligent and I feel like I don't stack up.
But you have like a bunch of education.
I know. It's just that.
Let's work on that.
I know. But it's like, there's a difference in the way that certain people communicate. So the whole thing today is about communication.
Yeah.
But a way that they communicate what they know. I have a different way of doing that. Also, like, I need to not feel stupid because you know far more about the alien world, alien and aliens, than I do.
I put in a lot more time rewatching a movie.
Right. That's the thing, though. But I need to recognize that, like, I don't need to know everything that you do in order
I do that
to feel
too.
intelligent. You know what I mean?
Or just to have a conversation. I do the same thing where I worry that if somebody likes a thing, like I don't know, I'm a lot better about this than I used to be. Like, I think
movies, books.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they first get into a relationship, they worry or hope that they will like all of the same things.
Yeah.
And I would say that is not necessary. I don't necessarily think that any two people can like all of the same things, because that just seems impossible. But I don't think that's necessary either, because if it was just we like all the same things and we both fit into this little box, then what?
That can be very boring then.
Yeah.
And plus you're in it to sort of like grow and
then it creates stagnation, I would think, because I've definitely been in relationships like that where it's like same music, same movies, same books, same everything.
So I'm dating myself.
And then exactly. And then I don't know, it just creates weirder conflict and just stagnation, I think.
When I am first meeting somebody as a friend or otherwise, I do have to practice being able to say, oh no, I don't know anything about that. You know what I mean? I don't know is hard.
Yeah. I want to jump straight to being best friends.
Yeah.
I don't like the little in-between parts of like getting to know somebody and finding out that you might not have everything in common. Like, I want to just like jump right to it and like, and now we're best friends and we love all the same things and we're gonna fly through the sky on a rainbow. Like, I want that, but that's not a real thing.
No.
Like, that's not how communication works. I mean, and I think that's another, I don't know if this makes me sound like I'm a million years old or like I just like have studied it, because it's probably both. But with like online dating and the internet, we can put so much out there for people to absorb at one time about who we might be. So somebody could feel on the other side of that, like with online dating, which sounds like an absolute nightmare to me, and I would just put me in a cannon and shoot me into the sky instead. But anyway, yeah, I think it sets...
How do you really feel?
It sets you up to feel like you know more about a person than you really do, which can lead to disappointment, and it can lead to other people bamboozling you.
Bamboozled.
Yeah, like you were just talking about using AOL in chat rooms when you were younger, and some guy was pretending to be a girl your age, and he wasn't. So yeah, it can get difficult because we have the illusion that we can get more information and we can communicate better through technology, when it can be a start, it can be a jumping off point, but I don't know that that's the healthiest way to communicate. A lot can be lost. A lot can be misunderstood.
Oh yeah.
Especially say you have somebody as a husband that is dyslexic, and that person likes to text a whole bunch and likes to communicate by text during the workday, and said dyslexic husband misreads whole bunches of things that lead to unnecessary arguments.
I mean, let's just say happens.
Let's just say that's an example of a thing that could happen
Strange. Often,
and maybe she should just call him instead, but
doesn't, because she doesn't like talking on the phone.
So communication's hard. None of us know what we're doing. So that's the other secret, is that none of us really know how to do it properly. There's no sure, people can come to counseling and they can learn how to have better relationships. They can learn to communicate better. Guess what? That doesn't mean I know how to do all of that on my own. I could tell you how to communicate better. I could tell you how to improve your relationship. That doesn't mean I'm doing all those things.
Right.
It would be like, I don't know, if I were like a dietitian, but I ate ice cream. If I was a dietitian, I would still eat ice cream every day.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So
I just have better excuses for why I'm eating it.
It's just, I don't know if that's a good example or not.
Maybe not, but it's okay.
I don't know. But that would be the same thing. It's like, because I would still, at the end of the day, I would still be a human that likes to have a treat every day. I don't know. That's probably something a dietitian would be okay with, but I don't know. I digress.
So in talking about communication, number one, I want to back up for a second to, I guess, the beginning of this whole thing. The word that I think applies to this from a yoga standpoint is dharana, which is concentration or focus.
Focus.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that I think applies to the listening aspect, but also I think the communication itself. So there are different forms of communication, and I guess it depends on, so to your point with Jason.
What?
I mean this fictitious person that may or may not be named Jason. Finding the way that person communicates best, is helpful. Yeah. So the things that I could think of, like, first of all, texting, emailing, phone calls, in person, the language itself, whether it's a foreign language, sign language, perhaps you communicate through dance or music or writing or poetry, some form of artwork, you're painting. So there are different forms of communication. That's why we have concepts of like art therapy, music therapy, color therapy, all this stuff. And trying to figure out, number one, what's your best way of communicating? And I have found that it's in writing. I can't, like this whole speaking thing, I actually am not as clever speaking as I am.
I tend to communicate. I can get more across in writing than I can speaking. I can type. It's almost like I can type faster than I can think sometimes if it's typing or even handwriting. So I think that's where some conflict can arise when my preference is writing, so a text versus somebody else who literally that's like a barrier for them.
Now I am dyslexic to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And so texting for me is hard. However, the challenge is that I am better at communicating and writing. So I just sort of struggle with it.
Yeah.
That's why punctuation in texting is really important for me.
Yeah. Otherwise you're like, what? Where'd it go? Where'd the rest of it go? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of relationships, like romantic relationships, there's the idea of like love languages. And that everybody has a different language in which they show love. And that, you know what? Scratch the romantic relationship, because I'm just going to say love languages in terms of like friends,
the
family,
whole spectrum
partners,
of what love is.
Any type of love. So for some people, so some of the love languages are acts of service. So doing something nice for somebody. So maybe you do their laundry for them. Some people are more touchy-feely, so they actually need more hugs because that's the only way that they feel like they can show love, or the way that they are getting love. Some people it's like verbal praise. Some people it's gifts. Like some people may have a hard time expressing things verbally. So
God, I suck at buying gifts. I suck at gifts.
You might be overthinking it, because I
know I'm overthinking it. I suck at it. Like if there was a workshop on how to buy a gift, I would take it.
Huh. I'm sure you're not alone.
God.
I
like birthdays and Christmas. I have so much anxiety over it.
Yeah, you're overthinking it. You're thinking too far out to the outcome, the what ifs. Yeah, I think I'm an acts of service gifty kind of person. And the trouble with that is that in a relationship, like if you live with somebody, if they don't know that about you and they have a different way of showing love, it can create a lot of conflict. So if you're somebody that's like more of an acts of service person and the other person is more of like verbal, and you're doing all of these things for them, but you're not telling them how great you think they are, they're gonna think they're probably not even gonna notice all the stuff you're doing for them.
So I think having a conversation about first of all, you have to sort of recognize within yourself, this is how I receive love, this is how I give love.
Yeah.
And having that communication with the other person so that we're all on the same page. I'm not asking you to do all of the things that I do to show love, but recognize like when I do this is what I mean.
Right.
Translate this as I love you.
Right. And that, I think a lot of people have a hard time with that because, again, back to vulnerability. We inherently don't want to feel vulnerable. We want to feel like we're in control, but there's some amount of vulnerability that you have to sit with. So with communication, one of the big things is being able to sit with discomfort. And we talk about that a lot. Sitting with the discomfort of the other person potentially receiving the information different than you had intended it.
And also timing.
Or not liking it, or having bad timing. There's so many different different factors.
Not only bad timing, but also like now that we live in this sort of like instant message.
Yeah.
But I send you a text and you're busy.
Yeah.
And you don't respond for like 2 hours. Oh, I'm like, oh my God, Lauren hates me.
That is a major theme.
She's completely offended by what I said.
That happens so much to so many people, and especially, no, not even especially any one group. It just happens so much now. Like we've created this other way to worry about how people are receiving us, because I'll do the same thing. Like I'll send a text, or it's a question, or email's even worse. Like if there's a work related email and it's like an important thing and you send it to like a boss or somebody and you don't hear back that day, you're like, it's all over, I'm fired, they think I'm an idiot.
And they're like, and that's the thing. Like,
and they're like, I was on vacation. Or,
that's the thing. The answer to nearly everything is that it's not about you. Like students that don't come back to class, usually it's not about me.
Right.
I think I am an offensive person probably sometimes, but I don't think that I've really pushed that many people away. But then they do come back and they're like, oh yeah, I was in Paraguay.
There's always a thing. They're like, yeah, I broke my leg. I had an instance of this recently where I had a client. It was a new client that I met with once, and I was trying to reschedule with this client, and then our billing department took the person off of my caseload, and I was looking to reschedule because I was like, oh, I still need to put that person on my schedule, and I looked through my client list, and that client was gone, and I was like, oh, no.
Completely took
And I saw that they had been scheduled with another therapist, and I was like, oh my God, I suck. That person hates me. And nobody told me. My boss didn't tell me because she didn't want me to be sad. And I just like was like, you know what? Just ask what happened, because you don't want to seem like you're not trying to reschedule the person, for one. And it turned out that I can only accept certain insurance, and they didn't have one of the insurances that I accepted.
So it literally is nothing personal. It had nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with me. So certain therapists can take certain insurance. I don't have all of my numbers yet for taking certain insurance. Like it took me a while to be able to take Medicaid, for example, because it's, state funded, and it's just difficult. Yeah. So it was an instance where something like that happened, and I don't accept that insurance yet. But for like 2 days, I was like, oh man, I suck. It wasn't about me.
And we do that.
They needed to be able to afford to come, and they couldn't have their insurance taken with me. And I do that with yoga too. I've been doing that So we were trying to start an 8:30 Tuesday, Thursday class here. I didn't have anybody come, and like I had this message in my head that it was me, but then I was like, how could it even be me if they've never taken this class?
Right, they don't know.
How could somebody that's never met me look at the schedule and go, oh, her? Not doing that. Like, but that's
not
just,
it's not a thing.
It's like the knee-jerk reaction.
Right, yes. We take things so personally.
Yeah, and there's no reason for it. I think I don't know, everybody says that there's a certain age. Some people say it'll be like 35, some say 40, some say 45, where you care less and less and less, and you start to care less. I feel a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's lessening for me.
I
think it depends on the thing.
Yeah, like, for me, it depends on
I'm super passionate about yoga and the classes, and of course that also there's a monetary aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
So I do take it a little bit, I don't know, there's a little bit more to it, but...
Yeah. I try, but I still sometimes take it personally. I'm like, well, why did this teacher have this many people and I didn't have any? And then it's like, oh, this teacher's been here for like 3 years. Because I've done this at other places where it's like there's a teacher that's been in that studio for like a decade, and they have like 20 people in their class. No one at the studio has met me, and I show up for my little like 6 p.m. class or whatever, and like nobody shows up, and I'm like, why did she get all the students? Like, oh, do you think it was because people have known her and they've never taken your class? I'm like, no, it's because I suck.
Of course, that's got to be it.
So our communication with ourselves is a whole other topic.
That's
self-talk. Woo.
I mean, maybe some of this stuff, I don't know how to maintain contact with myself, but I mean, maybe some of these rules can apply. So we talked about listening. Communication in general. One thing that I did want to bring up, read this great quote. Hearing is a physical ability, listening is a skill. implying that it's a skill, or stating that it's a skill, means it takes practice.
It does.
So all of this communication takes practice, listening takes practice, and sometimes you're going to screw it up. Sometimes it's not going to go well, but you're going to learn from that experience, or try to, say, okay, why was I just offended by this? Or how could I have said that better? Or, and perhaps be open and honest. That's one of the things that, to your point about, like, as we age, things change. I think where I'm getting to is I'm being more honest with people about, like, oh, that kind of really just offended me right there.
That's important. That's an important piece of communication.
Because you also need to tell somebody that. So, like, if something that they said was offensive, you don't want them to say it again. And the flip side, they maybe didn't intend to make you feel bad.
Right. I said this once, and I don't know who I was talking to, but they thought I was being funny, and I wasn't. I was like, if life is too short to tell people that you love them, it is also too short not to tell them when they're being a shithead.
I agree, 100%.
And that goes for friends, family, whomever that you have in your life that is saying something that's offensive or hurtful, and if life is too short to tell them that you love them, and you do love them, if they've said something that's hurtful, it's too short to not let them know that.
If the relationship matters, yeah.
Exactly. I'm not saying you have to go around telling everybody, like, that they suck, because I feel like that's kind of like an internet culture thing right now, is that everybody's, wants to put each other down. But within the context of a relationship, a good relationship, if somebody's saying something to you that's, like, in any way, even if they don't intend it to, if it feels abusive in any way, like verbally, emotionally, whatever, just say, like, what?
Dude, you've crossed the line.
That sucks.
Yeah.
When you said that made me feel like you don't give a crap about me, or whatever the feeling is. Yeah.
So I think we've talked about this before, but talking about boundaries is really important, especially, well, maybe not especially, but when it comes to communication. So you had made a comment, we were texting about this episode the other day, and you said, being present for others, but knowing your boundaries, knowing your limits.
Yeah, you don't have to be a sponge for somebody else's stuff. You don't have to receive you don't have to be everything to somebody, I think. You may want to, and you want to be the person that receives all of their stuff, but at the end of the day, how much can you really absorb and take and let go? Because you want to talk about, like, Buddhism, or, like, Tonglen, or, like, some of the things that Pima Chodron talks about is, like, being able to absorb the hurt of the world and then filter it and breathe it out.
Yeah.
That's a great concept, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, but we honestly, like, in the real, like, Western world, I think that we can put boundaries up. Like, the idea, the concept of Tonglen is a practice. So Tonglen is, like, breathing in other people's sorrow, their pain, whatever, filtering it out, and then breathing back out love, kindness.
Because I think Tonglen actually, it's like giving and taking, taking and giving, something like that. You're taking their pain.
Yeah.
Exploding it, and then giving them whatever good energy, good thoughts that you've got.
So in theory, that's beautiful and it's wonderful, and it's a really good practice if you choose to do it for meditation, but you still, at the end of the day, need to take care of yourself so that you can give back. It's like that's, the empty pitcher, the empty cup thing. It's like you don't need to keep absorbing somebody else's stuff. Like, none of us are meant to do that. We don't need to be a saint. We don't need to,
a martyr.
Yeah, we don't need to be a martyr. We're just people, and that can be something difficult. And as a yoga teacher as well too, because sometimes people will put some of that on to the teacher, that the teacher is there for their to somehow absorb whatever their stuff is and help them to be, I don't know, get to that place where they feel enlightened or happiness or contentment or calm or whatever.
I feel like there are times when I can sense that I'm kind of energy sensitive, and I don't mean like woo-woo, but it's like, I guess it is.
You're just empathetic.
I don't know.
You're an empath.
I am an empath. And so, I can tell when I'm in, this is not a new thing, but recently I've had like this roller coaster of emotions, and so I have to be very careful when I'm going into a class of where my energy level is, where my mood is, because not only do I not want to pour all of my stuff onto them, but I also need to protect myself.
Yeah.
Because if I'm vulnerable, as we're talking about vulnerability, that can like drive me deeper into whatever's going on. So there are times when I'm sort of like, it's almost like I've put up like a force field or like a facade of like being pleasant and accepting, and yet I truly have some sort of visualization where it's like they're telling me all of their stuff and it's going ping, ping,
agree.
Ping.
It's like I've been thinking about that with counseling too, and yoga is like, it's like almost like a psychic bubble of protection.
I mean, I feel like I have to do that sometimes.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm willing to be some of that to a certain extent for students, because I've sort of built this, like you've got this small studio space, it's intimate by design. Mm-hmm. And that is to encourage people to be themselves and open up when they may not usually do that. And so you're kind of gonna get that, but at the same time, it's like giving them the space to do what they need. But I'm not gonna absorb it all.
You're creating the space, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is sometimes people in that context don't have the capacity to absorb our stuff as the place of the teacher, because sometimes and this is something I haven't figured out, and I don't know that we need to figure it out, but sometimes they come because they need to have somebody else. This is one of my favorite things about going to yoga class, is having somebody else in charge, somebody else kind of like guiding.
You do this.
Whatever is happening. They just want somebody else to hold space. And that's really all they need. So if that person that's holding space for them is pouring out their stuff, they're possibly not even prepared for that or equipped for that, and it may ruin their day.
Yeah.
So if you go in there crying about how, you know, your dog just died, first of all, maybe you didn't need to teach the class that night.
Yeah.
That's another part of boundaries too.
Yes.
Is that we are human, and we don't have to, if something really rough happened, we don't have to be present for others in that way if we need to take care of our own stuff.
I mean, I have a challenge with, like, I know, I admit, I tend to overshare, and I think most people who are students here recognize that. They know that about me. But I'm sharing or oversharing because I want to share an example of an experience. So I personally have to find that line between I'm sharing so that you see that, like, I'm human, these kind of things happen, and they're normalizing.
It's normalizing, yeah. I've done that. I've definitely done that. I definitely do that. One of the things that I was always taught with self-disclosure, and at least in social work, which this would cross over into yoga too, is when you're doing it, is it for your benefit or is it for their benefit?
Right.
If it's for you to get it off of your chest, you probably shouldn't do it. If it's for the benefit of the group, maybe that you're normalizing a thing, maybe they're feeling less alone if you tell them this thing, then yeah, go ahead. Just the normalizing aspect, or if it could give them some kind of hope, like, hey, this shitty thing happened to me, but then I
made it through
XYZ, and now I'm here.
Right.
Like, which can be really helpful for a lot of people in a lot of contexts. Because, I mean, if you go back to our last episode of feeling isolated, some people feel like whatever they're feeling, they're the only one that could possibly be feeling.
And a lot of times that's like in mental illness, mental health arena. Oh my gosh,
yes. Everybody that, especially people with depression, one of the main kind of tenets of depression is that you feel alone, and you feel that no one can understand you. You feel isolated.
And Lord, you're not alone.
But then if you were to go and sit in a room, maybe group therapy with other people who are feeling depressed, you would find that you all feel that because that's part of depression.
Right.
Or people that have panic attacks. I've noticed that a lot of people that have panic attacks are afraid to talk about it because they think, if they don't know a lot about it, they think they're going crazy for when, or they're dying or whatever, but they're afraid that if somebody knows, then they're going to call them crazy, they're going to think they're crazy, and then they find out that, like, some huge percentage of people have had panic attacks before, and then, I don't know, it takes its power away, too, with mental illness stuff, like depression, anxiety. When you can normalize stuff, it will tend to take the power away for people, like, oh, this isn't just me. And
I don't know if anybody ever feels this, but it's like, it's not to say that you're not special, right, and that you're not unique. I mean, the reason why you're depressed, the reason why you have your anxiety, whatever, that is still yours and special and unique if you want it to be. But feeling the things, like, you're not alone. And
yeah, and that can be a difficult line for somebody that's maybe feeling really rough, is to, if you use self-disclosure, if you use a story or something to let them know they're not alone, depending on where their heads are at, they could take it as, oh, well, I'm my issues are not important or they're not special. So it's just, you just really have to read the room if you can.
Right.
Read yourself. Are you trying to make yourself feel better? Or are you trying to make somebody else?
That's a good test.
So takeaways about communication.
It's hard. It takes practice. It is, listening's a skill. I think communicating is a skill. I think that overall, like there's the who's the guy with the book? How to Win Friends and
I don't know his name, but I know what you mean. And influence people.
Dale Carnegie. Yes, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think the thing is that if you feel like communication is a challenge, there's a way to, number one, practice. Mm-hmm. And this I think can go back to our last episode. Being around people, that's where you're going to practice communication. Paying attention to other people, eye contact, looking people in the face, and being present, staying mindful. And like one of the things about something to, the last thing on this list that I found of things to pay attention to when you're listening to somebody is if you have an attention span problem. Like if you know that you've got a short attention span, then perhaps you have to do what you can to stay more focused, or let somebody know ahead of time. For example, like if this is, as you were saying, like if there's an important conversation that you'd like to have, like you'd like to vent, say something ahead of time, like, look, you know what, I'd love to be able to hear your story. I only have 10 minutes and I'm really sorry. So can you keep it short, or do we need to reschedule to a different time?
Yeah, is there another time that we could talk about this because I really want to pay attention?
Yeah. So I think setting the expectations, so there's even this is so meta, but communicating about communicating, letting somebody know ahead of time.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, or even asking if there's an important conversation that you need to have with somebody. Maybe it's not super important, but maybe you just know that they struggle with attention, or maybe, you just really want to make sure that you get it right.
Yeah, like, whatever. Are you totally listening to me right now? Because I need you to be.
It's okay to ask somebody for a time to talk about something.
Yes.
Like, that's something that my husband and I have to do. Not about anything super important, but it's kind of like, what was it? We were going to plan a vacation, and he was like, can we talk about this at this time? Because if I try to talk about it now, I won't remember it.
Yeah, like, let's just be honest.
Boom, done.
Like, I'm hungry, I'm tired, haven't had enough coffee. Yeah. You're not going to get me fully right now.
I do that all the time. He'll start talking to me about something, about can we do this, or should we do this, or something that's like planning, and I'm like, I do not have the ability to have this conversation right now. Can we do it later? And sure, there's a risk that could be upsetting to somebody else. But you have to at least ask. You have to at least communicate what you need, or else, if you're just like, I'm just going to let this conversation happen anyway, maybe you missed something really important. Maybe you don't remember anything that was said. And it goes horribly wrong.
Yes. And it's not recorded, for example. Because, once again, didn't record a whole section.
It was brilliant, and your minds would have been blown. So, like, if you go back to
practice your mind being blown. And
if you go back to our episode about spirituality, there are just some things that our human minds can't comprehend, and that's just one of them.
Yeah, it was just brilliant what we said. All of it was brilliant. Yeah, lost a whole thing we talked about the boundary cheat sheet, which we'll put in the link because we're not going through it again, because we're honoring our own energy. We're spent, which is, I'll be honest. Yep, completely depleted.
Yeah.
So communication's really important. There are so many different forms of communication. Recognize what you're best at. Recognize where your comfort zone is. And then notice where you are not as comfortable communicating. Maybe you can practice doing that thing. Practice even with a friend, It's like how you practice giving a speech or something like that. Do it. The more you do it, maybe the less uncomfortable it'll be. And that's just a good benefit, is learning how to communicate, and be willing for it to be uncomfortable too.
Yeah, and remember, again, I think I've said this like 10 times today, none of us fully know what we're doing.
No. You may think that somebody looks like they have their shit together and they're really good at it. They may be terrified on the inside.
We're all weighing it.
Yeah.
some way or another.
Yeah.
We're all vulnerable. We're all a little confused about how to communicate with each other.
It's true.
So we can only do our best. And sometimes that means putting in some effort that you were not prepared to put in, or being uncomfortable, or feeling really awkward. And that's okay, because that's how we grow.
Yep, it is. So, we're going to end this.
Get out of here.
We're going to stop doing this right now.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this, please do click like or subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for any further episodes, please shoot us an email or text or whatever. It's really easy to communicate with us. We have a lot of outlets for communication.
Yeah, you can go to our Instagram, you can go to our Facebook, you could go to Patreon, you could send a carrier pigeon, you could send a dog with a little message on its collar. I will accept that as well.
Yeah, any of those things, yeah. And so until the next time, keep the rebellion alive.
I forgot to say keep the rebellion alive, and as you were saying it, I was like, say it, and my mouth is like, boo.